I'm Barbara Batson, Exhibitions Coordinator at the Library of Virginia, and I'm in the exhibition, Your Humble Petitioner. The right to petition your government is an ancient right enshrined in the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Between 1776 and 1865, any person in Virginia could petition the General Assembly for any reason. Were there pigs running amok in your town's streets? You could ask for a law requiring that hogs be corralled. You wanted to keep sellers of liquor away from your church on Sundays? You petitioned the General Assembly. There's even a petition from a mining corporation asking that a cannon from the state armory be sent to California to protect that company's gold mine. Most of the almost 25,000 petitions in the Legislative Petition Collection are pretty mundane. The point is that anyone, male or female, black or white, free or enslaved, had the right to petition. Perhaps the most poignant are the petitions from black women and men who, if free, had few, if any, legal rights. So let's look at the petitions of three women, Nancy, Sarah N Ficklen, and Clara Robinson, that give us a glimpse of the barriers faced by Black Virginians. What kind of a barrier? Well, in 1806, the General Assembly enacted legislation that required any enslaved person who was emancipated to leave Virginia within a year or face enslavement. Because of that law, Nancy faced an impossible dilemma in 1815. John A. Benz, in his will, directed that Nancy be freed when she reached the age of 25. In her petition, she states that now she has reached 25, and she asked the honorable body for permission to remain because she is, quote, the mother of 3 children from whom she will be torn, which will be almost as severe as the loss of life. She asks the men of the House of Delegates to, quote, pity a mother, although of sable hue, who has all the feelings of an affectionate mother towards her children. Because she had been enslaved when her children were born, they remained enslaved. Supporters agreed or attested that Nancy, quote, has always behaved herself as a faithful and industrious servant. And they had no doubt that if allowed to remain in Virginia, quote, she will behave herself with equal rectitude and industry and maintain herself in a respectable manner. The Committee of the Courts of Justice believed that Nancy's petition was reasonable, and a bill was drawn, but no act was passed. So what happened to Nancy? The record is silent. Sarah N Ficklen also faced removal from Virginia, but her circumstances were a little more complicated. Her father, Cyrus Ficklen, was a free man of color who married an enslaved woman whom he later purchased but may not have freed. They had 2 girls, Sarah Ann and Abba. Cyrus died intestate, that is, without a will. Because the girls were enslaved, they could not inherit his estate, and the Commonwealth took over administration of Cyrus's estate. The courts appointed 3 administrators, the last of whom, Leroy Cooper, never settled Cyrus's estate and actually may have been embezzling. So, in 1856, Sarah Ann's lawyer made an unusual argument. Because her father's estate was under the administration of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and she was still enslaved and part of the estate, the lawyer argued that Sarah Ann belonged to the state. Would the state sell Sarah Ann and her children to the American Colonization Society and use those funds to settle her father's estate? The General Assembly agreed, provided that the society removed Ficklen and her children from the state. Once out of Virginia, Sarah Ficklen and her children were free. The last petition that we'll look at today is one submitted by Clara Robinson. Nancy and Sarah Ann were both younger women. Clara Robinson was 60 years old when she petitioned the General Assembly in 1848. Recently emancipated by Elizabeth Gibson, Robinson wanted to remain in Richmond. Her children, who had remained enslaved, lived in the city, and she was closely knit to the community through her work as a midwife. At her advanced age, she was loath to, quote, quit the city unknown and unprotected to wander to a foreign state, meeting the hardships and infirmities of old age, unsupported and uncheered by the warmth of filial affection, of kindly gratitude for past services. If allowed to remain, she said that she would continue to work as a midwife and she would not become a burden on the state or the city. To support her petition, Robinson submitted testimony from the leading medical doctors of Richmond, who noted that if forced to leave Virginia, Robinson's departure would, quote, cause a serious inconvenience and annoyance to the many white families who employed her. One supporter of Robinson was James A. Seddon, a former congressman from Virginia, from Richmond actually, whose wife Sarah Bruce probably had employed Robinson as a midwife or a nurse. For an unknown reason, Robinson withdrew her petition but then resubmitted it for consideration a year later in 1849. The General Assembly finally enacted legislation in March 1850 that declared the Richmond Hustings Court could grant permission for Robinson to remain in the city. These small sheets of paper in the Legislative Petition Collection tell us much about the everyday concerns of Virginians before 1865. And many, such as the petitions of Nancy, Sarah Ann, and Clara, reveal deeply personal situations. If you want to know more, visit the library's website. You can actually search the Legislative Petition Collection at this URL. Hope you have fun. Thanks for joining me today.